Many persons assume that attending Trevecca is a financial impossibility. They think that private education is out of their reach, but those assumptions are wrong. Trevecca's tuition is significantly less than the national average of schools similar to Trevecca, and Trevecca's tuition is less than the average tuition of private colleges, universities in Tennessee. Among the 8 Church of the Nazarene colleges and universities in the U.S., Trevecca's tuition is the lowest, and the percentage of Trevecca students who receive financial aid is higher than the national average. Trevecca is an affordable option for higher education. For more information on Trevecca Nazarene University or any of its programs, visit trevecca.edu.
In his chapter on sanctification as communal, Dunning articulates a side of holiness that I don't believe we talk about enough. The idea that we are sanctified or set apart as a people. That holiness is not just a private individual experience, but has everything to do with our life together. Growing up, I knew people who claimed to be sanctified, but who couldn't get along with anyone. I knew then there was something not right about that. Nothing has been more transformational in my understanding of sanctification and holiness than the concept Dunning speaks of in this chapter, that sanctification happens in the context of the church, and that our mission is not just to proclaim Christian holiness with our words, but to live holiness as a people. Before we launch into this, it's important to note the distinction Dunning makes at the beginning of this chapter between personal experience and individual experience. By saying that holiness is corporate, Dunning is not saying that it's not also a personal experience. It absolutely is. He is saying that it was never meant to be individualistic. It was never meant to be just you and Jesus. In fact, as we'll see today, the life of holiness in its fullness requires participation in a people. Dunning rightly relates this communal perspective on holiness back to 2 ideas: the image of God as seen in creation and the formation of the people of Israel. To put it simply, the image of God is relational. We can't even be human without relationship. To be in the image of God is to be in community, in right relationship with God and with others. As God created people in his image, there in the early days in the garden, there was shalom, wholeness, persons created to be in complete dependence on God and in right relationship with each other and with all creation. Well, that's the story in Genesis 1. But by chapter 2, and especially by chapter 11 at the Tower of Babel, people have asserted their independence. They've rejected community with God and with others in favor of the self, and things are spiraling quickly into chaos. People can't be who they were made to be when community is splintered by self-assertion or independence. And so God forms for himself a people, the people of Israel, creating again the possibility of reflecting the image of God in community. He forms a holy nation who will bless the whole world by living a different story than the one we see in the fall. They will enjoy shalom, wholeness, peace, right relationships with God and man, and they will demonstrate these things to the world in order to be a blessing to all nations. Israel is given a blessing, but the blessing is not only for them, but also for the whole world. So holiness for the people of Israel is a gift, a blessing, but it's also a calling, as this holiness is not just for themselves, but they are to be a blessing, a demonstration to the nations. This is what Dunning means when he says that Israel is meant to be a paradigm of God's intention for the human race. In some ways, they're in a fishbowl with the whole world looking on. To understand holiness as communal, I think this gift and calling or blessed and blessing tension is so crucial to maintain. I'll use this slinky to show you what I mean. If I hold both ends of the slinky, you can see the beauty of it. Picture one end being the gift of holiness and one end being the calling of holiness for the nations. The trouble comes for Israel and for us whenever the tension between the gift and calling of holiness gets collapsed. If we claim holiness but see it only as a gift and thus see ourselves as privileged ones and become exclusionary, then the beauty of holiness unravels. If, on the other hand, we focus on relationship to those around us, our desire to be relevant, and we neglect right relationship with God, we're not different enough to be a demonstration. Again, the beauty of sanctification as communal unravels. The beauty of holiness requires a people in right relationship with God and with each other and with the nations. Dunning speaks of the church as the context for the sanctifying work of the Spirit. This actually makes a lot of sense when we think about the fruit of the Spirit, which Dunning has written about at length in other chapters. The fruit of the Spirit doesn't really show up as fruit as long as you are living alone on a desert island or praying all by yourself in a room. But come out into a space shared with your kids or teenagers, wife or husband. Come into the messiness of relationship, and the fruit will either show up or its lack will be revealed. Show up at the church, where different people with different backgrounds and preferences and personalities and races or cultures are coming together, and you have shown up in the classroom of holiness. Community gives us the opportunity to receive fruit from the Spirit, to live in ways with each other that show that fruit, and thus to demonstrate the Spirit to the world. Looking on the people of God, those in the world should have to say, "Behold how they love one another." In order for us to be long-suffering, gentle, good, etc., we need the Spirit's empowering. It is the fruit of the Spirit, after all, and we can't produce it ourselves. But we also need sandpaper people who sometimes rub us the wrong way. We actually need conflict so that there can be Spirit-filled ways of dealing with the conflict. We need people who are not like us, to whom we are opening our lives, even when that is messy and difficult. There must be contact with enemies in order to practice forgiving them. Both the Spirit's empowering and the challenges of community are essential to fruit bearing. And that ought to be good news for some of us. If sanctification happens in the context of relationships within the church, some of us should be uniquely positioned for incredible growth in holiness. There's one last thing I'd like you to think about as you consider sanctification as communal. The communal nature of holiness shows us in new ways the importance of utter trust or dependence on the Spirit to make us a holy people. Compromise is an obvious enemy of corporate holiness, but another enemy of corporate holiness is fear. This is true whether we are afraid for the purity of our doctrine, afraid for cherished traditions, or on the other side, afraid of not being relevant enough to the world. When we are afraid, we cease to trust the Holy Spirit, we cease to trust others, and we move towards grasping, protecting, and building walls. Whichever direction we move in fear, we move into self-reliance and self-preservation. We can't welcome outsiders, and we can't welcome insiders who disagree with us. Fear and self-preservation should be a red flag for us that we're not trusting the Holy Spirit to bring the fruit. We're not trusting God to build His kingdom. And likely in that process, we're not treating others in line with the holiness to which we are called. Perfect love casts out fear.